Hey guys, welcome back. So, before we start on today's case, I just want to issue an apology for the lack of content for the past few weeks. Now, unfortunately I broke my phone, and that is my only source of internet. This is how I record, this is how I do everything. So, the whole week and a half of nothing was difficult. I know obviously for a while I was saying about the year anniversary of the channel, which is now. I was going to be doing a massive story, still in the pipeline, but unfortunately I lost all the progress of my research. So I've got to go through all that again, which is going to take a while to get back on track with. So I'm just subsidizing with some other stories in the meantime, just while I research the one that I really wanted to, because it's just going to take a while. Now, one of the recommendations for this channel was to do more LGBT crime, which is going to be the focus of the next 3 videos. I found 3 really interesting stories, ones I've never heard of. So if you guys aren't subscribed yet, please hit that subscription button. Just a massive thank you to everyone who is still been watching, everyone who is still supporting me. Just a massive thank you. Let's just keep churning these out, get the algorithms going. Yeah, just a huge thank you as always to all of you. I've really appreciated your support over the past year or so. So with all that said and done, we're going to get on to the case of Gwen Araujo. I'm not really sure how to pronounce her surname, but if anyone watching from the Latina community who knows, then please feel free to just correct me wherever I am. I always read your comments. Also, please excuse the lack of nails today. I broke, I don't know if you can see, just there, broke my nail. I didn't really want to aggravate the skin underneath. That's healing. This only happened last night. So with all that said and done, so if you can just like, share and subscribe, share this video worldwide. Let's get the algorithm started, and we're going to talk about Gwen Araujo and who she was. So Gwen, she was born on February the 24th, 1985 in Brawley in California. And this was to her parents, Edward and Sylvia. Now, Edward and Sylvia, they later divorced when Gwen was 10 months old. Now, initially, Gwen was born and raised as a boy. I do know her dead name, but I'm not going to go into that. Mainly because, obviously, there's a lot of hatred and a lot of negativity towards the trans community as a whole. There's a lot of people that enjoy dehumanizing trans people by either referring to them as it or shim or by their dead name. So I'm not going to divulge what her dead name actually was. So obviously I'm going to stick to calling her Gwen because that's what she wanted to be known by, and it's just the right thing to do. So at age of 14, so this is 1999, Gwen comes out as trans. Now, initially she uses the names Wendy and Lida, but she settles on Gwen after Gwen Stefani, who was her favourite singer and actually one of my favourite singers as well. So I feel me and Gwen would have had a little bit in common. She began growing her hair long. She planned to undergo hormone treatment. Bearing in mind, obviously, she was only 14 at the time. So, understandably, there's laws in place about minors who feel that they are trans or know that they are trans undergoing hormone treatments. So, she would have had to have waited until she was a legal age. So, she planned to go on hormone treatments and surgeries as soon as she was old enough. Now, Gwen's older sister, she said that Gwen was bullied in high school because of who she was. Bearing in mind, obviously, we're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s, which wasn't the most progressive of times. We were still, a lot of people in the gay community, in the LGBT community, very heavily persecuted against because of who we were. I'm not sure what the laws were in America at the time, but just on a side note, so in the UK, from the late 80s to the mid 2000s, we had a law called Section 28. Now, this prevented what they called, or what Margaret Thatcher called, she was the one that brought it in, the promotion of homosexuality. And this basically meant that if a student was being bullied for being gay, or if the children thought that this particular student was gay, the teacher couldn't be seen defending them because he would promote homosexuality. This is something that I dealt with in school myself. Very open and honest about that. And a lot of the times, the teachers just do nothing, and it ended up with my mum having to take the school to court. So this was a couple of years after Section 28 ceased to exist. That was in 2003. So around 2006, my mum had to take my school to court to have the bullies expelled. But obviously, my teachers at the time, they had taught and trained during Section 28. They knew no different. So, just a little side note of obviously what would have happened in that particular era in regards of being a gay, trans, lesbian, bisexual teenager. So they bullied her for her voice and because of her identity, and this resulted in Gwen transferring schools. But she eventually just dropped out altogether. She didn't actually complete her final year of education. In late August of 2002, Gwen meets and begins hanging around with four men. So these were Michael Magidson, Jose Merrill, Jason Cazares, and Jaron Nabors. Now, the three previous men, they were all 22 at the time. Jaron was 19. Now, Gwen initially introduces herself as leader. Now, it's stated that Gwen flirted with all four of these men. She smoked cannabis with them, and Gwen went to parties with them. Initially, they were a really good group of friends. And after a little while, the guys started tweeting on that Gwen, there was a possibility that she could be trans. And Sharon actually said to the other three, could this be a dude? But they just basically laughed this idea off, because if you look at a picture of Gwen, she exudes femininity, in my opinion anyway. You look at it and you wouldn't automatically assume that she was transgender. And that's just going on by her looks. Obviously, I never knew her, but just going by looks, you wouldn't automatically say, oh, she's transgender, in my opinion anyway. So on another occasion of meeting the men, Gwen performed oral sex on Michael, and she later agrees to have sex with Jose. But obviously, to hide the fact that she was trans, Gwen told Jose that she was actually on her period and agreed to have anal sex with him. Now, during this sexual encounter, Jose said that on a couple of attempts he tried to put his hand between her legs, but she would push them away. And October the 3rd, 2002, Gwen and the four men, they attend a house party. And this is along with Jose's brothers, Manny and Paul, and Paul's girlfriend, Nicole Brown. Now, Nicole and Gwen, they already knew each other, and things were tense, because as at one point, Gwen had actually been in a sexual relationship with Paul. Now, whilst Gwen was out of the room, discussions turned to her identity once more. They started discussing whether the possibility of Gwen actually being transgender. And Nicole challenged Gwen. So Gwen comes back in the room. Nicole challenges Gwen to do a striptease. And Gwen refuses, and it results in a physical fight between Gwen and Nicole. Now, Gwen surprised Nicole when Gwen punched her in the face. And Nicole stated that the men were tripping because she was smaller than me, but just as strong. She fought like a guy. To Gwen, then she leaves the house for a moment, and Jose said to the others, "I swear if that's a fucking man, I will kill him." To which Michael said, "I don't know what I'm going to do." Then Jaron, he adds in, "Whatever you do, make sure you don't make a mess." Now, on the early hours of October the 4th, Michael asked Gwen to reveal if she was a man. Gwen, obviously, she refuses. He asks to see and touch her genitals. And Gwen, again, she says no, fuck off. And Nicole then suggests that they should do a forced inspection of Gwen. And Michael walks Gwen into the bathroom with Nicole, and during this time frame of 30 minutes, Jose confesses that he's had sex with Gwen. Now, meanwhile, Nicole forces Gwen to remove her underwear, and at this point, they see Gwen's genitals. Nicole, she runs from the bathroom, she's screaming, "It's a fucking man." And the guys get really angry and aggressive towards Gwen. Nicole then warns Gwen of the men's reaction, and Gwen, she attempts to leave the house. She's escorted by Manny, but Michael, Jason and Jaron, they force Gwen to go back into the house. Now, witness statements claim that Jose vomited when he heard about Gwen and then cried, saying that he can't be fucking gay. Which just shows the attitudes towards transgender people in these days. I mean, to be honest, it still goes on now. You only have to read the comments online. I mean, just on a little side note here, I get a lot of comments on some of the stuff that I post, which is why I've turned the comments off on my TikTok video. Because obviously I'm not transgender in whatever, I'm a cross-dresser, drag queen, whatever you want to call me. I typically don't dress like this on a day-to-day basis. I think of myself as a man. I always have. Apart from a very small time back in when I was about 13, 14, I thought there was possibly I could be transgender, but that's a different story. But now, obviously, I know that in my heart, in my mind, in my body, I am male. It's the way I present myself in my day-to-day life. This is just a hobby for me. It's something I'm going down career-wise, with booking gigs and whatnot, but it's not an everyday thing for me. But I get a lot of comments saying, "Oh, you're a man, stay away from our children." Things like that, which is why I've turned the comments off on my TikTok videos. But every now and this is why I've got my pronouns set as he, him on Instagram. So obviously the attitude is still there. It's getting better. It's got so much better over the past 20 odd years, but it's not where it should be, if that makes sense. And obviously everyone's entitled to their opinion, but when their opinion becomes really hateful and it's death threats, then it's not cool, guys. Like, have your opinion, that's absolutely fine. I'm never going to meet you, you're never going to meet me, but why go out of your way to make someone else feel like shit? Like, just be respectful. So, sorry to go on to a little tangent there. I'm going to get back onto the story. So Nicole comforts Jose. She's saying, it's not your fault. I went to school with you and you were on the football team. Any woman who knows you after this, it's not going to matter. Just let her go. Like, only straight people that play football. It's by the by. You know, there's plenty of footballers nowadays who are, even back in the day, who were gay. But just your sexual preference doesn't determine whether you can kick a football around. But again, just ignorant people. So Gwen is then forced back into the house and Michael attempts to remove her clothes again. And Gwen resists this and Michael punches her in the face. And Gwen, she obviously falls to the ground and Michael climbs on top of her and begins to strangle her. But he's pulled off by the others. Gwen, she's begging them to stop. She's pleading for her family. And this just angers Jose, who picks up a can of food, and he hits her with it. And he hits her with it with such force that the can actually dents and it also cuts Gwen's head. He then picks up a heavy frying pan, he hits her with it. And whilst all this time Gwen is begging him and she's saying, I told you I was sorry. So Nicole, Paul and Manny then leave the house party, and Manny testifies that he actually went out to buy gum and he then went to stay at a friend's house that night. So Sharon and Jason, they stay behind. They take Michael's truck. They drive to Jason's house and they pick up a shovel and a pickaxe. And all the while they're talking about various plans of killing that bitch. Nicole later said that she and Paul had driven around the block. They saw Jason and Sharon leaving in the truck, but didn't stop them. So the two men return. They find Gwen still conscious. She's sitting on the sofa bleeding out. And Jose, he begins to worry that Gwen would bleed on the couch and stain their couch. So he orders her to get off the couch, lay on the floor. And the assault then resumes. Jason and Sharon order the others to knock the bitch out. And Michael then picks Gwen up and he smacks her face into the wall. And this was done with such force that the plasterboard and the paint all cracked on the wall with the impact. And Sharon then begins kicking Gwen. So Jose at the time, he stops, he goes to clean up some blood. He's cleaning from the carpet and the sofa, and he then goes into his room and he begins to cry. And he locks the door so the others won't see him crying. So Gwen, at this point, she's unconscious. Michael then binds her up and he wraps her in a blanket. He carries her into the garage. And at this point, the men then give different accounts of what happened next. So Sharon testified that Michael had strangled Gwen with rope and that Jason had struck her with a shovel. But as Sharon was returning to the garage, he didn't witness the strangulation. In interviews, he referred to Gwen as leader, and Sharon said that he saw Michael raise the rope and then left, and that Michael had wrapped the rope around leader's neck and twisted it. So Michael then testified that it was in fact Sharon who had strangled Gwen with the rope and hit her with the shovel, and Jason said that he basically hadn't done anything. He was just a stander by. He didn't actually see Gwen die at all. Now, Jose said that he had been cleaning blood as Michael had bound Gwen and took her into the garage. and he added that he thought Gwen was still alive when he saw her in the truck. Now, none of them gave a clear time of death, but the autopsy backed up the strangulation and the blunt trauma. Now, according to Sharon, Michael wasn't sure if she had died from twisting the rope, but once Jason had hit her head twice with the shovel, he knew she was dead. So with the body now in the pickup truck, they drove 4 hours to Sierra Nevada mountain. They bury her in a shallow grave in the El Dorado National Forest. They then do the 4-hour journey back home. They stop at McDonald's for a breakfast. And later on that morning, Nicole calls Jose and asks what had actually happened that night. And Jose said, let's just say she didn't have a long walk home. So the 4 guys, they just go about their business as usual. They get on with their life and they pretend that nothing has happened, that Gwen never existed. So Sylvia said that she just obviously grew really worried the next day, as her and Gwen were always in community with each other. Gwen was always ringing her, vice versa. So by the time the next day come around, she hadn't heard from her daughter. Sylvia contacts the police to file a missing persons report. And the police, they initially didn't take it seriously. And it's believed, I can't find any evidence to back this up, but it's believed that this was just due to the fact that Gwen was transgender. But then, obviously, the rumours of a transgender girl being outed at a party and murdered, this reached the family. So Gwen's auntie, she contacts the police on the 9th of October. Police then begin investigating. They speak to other people who are at the house party. Now, one of these gives the address of Jose, and a friend of Sharon Naber's described him as appearing really distraught, and Sharon then confessed to this friend what actually happened after he drove to where Gwen had been buried. The friend then tells the police and agrees to wear a secret mic to garner further information from Sharon. So Sharon was then shown this. He agrees to take police to the burial site, and this is on October the 15th. And the Alameda County Sheriff Office, they dispatched 4 crime scene investigators and 2 detectives to recover Gwen's body from the grave. Michael, Sharon, and Jose, they are arrested alongside Paul. But Paul was later released after Nicole and Manny were able to provide an alibi for him. The 3 others, however, they are charged with murder on October the 17th and held without bail. On October 24th, Sharon pleads not guilty. Michael, he was still looking for an attorney to represent him, and Jose was still going through the evidence that was stacked up against him. But he was really confident that the charges against him would be dropped. So after the arrest, Sharon wrote to a girlfriend where he named him and 3 other men and... named all the other men. And he discusses a soprano-type plan to kill Gwen and dump her body. And this letter was later intercepted, and this led to Jason's arrest on November the 19th. Now, at the trial, defense attorney Tony Serra accused Jason of writing the letter, knowing that it would be intercepted and implicate the others. So the trials begin in 2003, February 2003, and first up was Jason, and he pleads guilty to a lesser charge of manslaughter, along with the promise of testifying against the other 3. Now, during the formal entry of his plea, Judge Kenneth Burr warned Sharon that he could be charged with murder if found guilty, and not living up to his end of the bargain. So during the indictment proceedings, he speaks in detail about the murder and the burial. As they buried her, he said that they continued to make disparaging remarks And he adds that he said, "I can't believe someone would ever do that, to be so deceitful." And Jose said, "I'm so mad I could kick her a couple more times." He eventually was sentenced in August 2006. He receives an 11-year sentence. With credit of time served, he was only expected to serve 5 years. Just because you enter... I thought the American justice system was a lot better than that, but with that kind of murder, and to only get a tiny, tiny portion of your sentence just because you entered a plea deal, it just doesn't sit right with me. No. But here we go. Now, the jury selection for Michael, Jose and Jason begins in March 2004. The jurors were asked if they knew anyone from the LGBT community or watched films depicting same-sex or transgender couples, which I don't really get. I don't understand why that was even brought forward. You don't have to know anyone in the community to know that murdering someone from that community is wrong. Like, a homophobic attack is wrong, a transgender phobic attack is wrong, any kind of phobic attack is wrong, any kind of attack, full stop, is wrong. Why would anyone have to know someone in their family or friend circle who is a member of the community? It baffles me. But this line, eventually was scrapped because they just realised the lunacy of it, the absolute ignorance of it. So the trial begins on April the 14th, 2004. Prosecutor Chris Lamero, he refers to Gwen by her dead name. He uses male pronouns, and he added on to the wage of the victim's deception, and he said that the cost of her deception was her death. In opening statements, the defence of Michael argued that he shouldn't be tried for murder, but for the lesser charge of manslaughter, and said that he wasn't acting biased, but rather shocked beyond reason to find out that he had unknowingly had sex with a man. Now, this at the time was called the gay panic defence, and this has been used a couple of times throughout the years. And this is just basically when someone who was involved within a hate crime, as what it's known now, they could use the defence, well, I was defending myself because I'm straight and I've got a gay person or a trans person hitting on me and I panicked. That's their line of defence. Now, during his testimony, Jaron said that he felt as if his friends had been raped, and that Gwen, and again, obviously using male pronouns, did not come clean as to who he was. I feel like he forced them into gay sex. And my definition of being forced into sex is rape. Now, when asked how Gwen forced them, he said that it was through deception. Like, Gwen hadn't said that he was a man. That's his words, not mine. Just to make it clear. Now, after 9 days of deliberating, the first trial ended on the June of the 22nd, 2004. The jurors couldn't reach a unanimous decision. They agreed that Gwen had been murdered, but they doubted whether it was premeditated. They were given the option of a second-degree conviction, but the jury couldn't make their mind up whether it was first degree or second degree. So a second trial was ordered, and this begins on May 31st, 2005. So Sylvia, Gwen's mother, she had successfully changed Gwen's identity posthumously, meaning jurors had to refer to Gwen as she, rightly so. That was her identity, that's who she was. So from now on, they had to refer to her as Gwen, they had to refer to her as she, her, so on. Now, the three men testified, all blaming one another. They blamed most of it on Sharon. Michael admitted to strangling Gwen, and Jose testified that it was Sharon responsible for the head injuries. Michael had indeed strangled her as well. A police interview was then played of Michael, and this is where a detective is clearly heard telling Michael to go down the road of the gay panic defence. Jurors were then given the option of first or second degree murder, and the three of manslaughter for Jose specifically. But then they asked for first degree murder specifically for Michael and Jason. They labelled Michael as the main culprit. They called him a poor excuse for a man with a stupid and moronic list of excuses for murdering Gwen. On the 8th of September, the jury had reached a verdict on 2 of the 3, and this ended on the 12th of September. Now, it voted Michael and Jose in favour of second degree murder, and in January 2006, they were sentenced to 15 years apiece. Now, Jose expressed sorrow for his part, apologising to Gwen's family, but Michael, he expressed anger at his conviction, and he remained really defiant that he had done nothing wrong. Now, prosecutor Chris Lamiro then spoke, saying, Gwen being trans was not a provocative act, it's who she was. However, I wouldn't ignore the fact that she made decisions in her relations with the men that were impossible to defend. I don't think jurors think it's okay to engage in sexual activity knowing they assume you have one sexual anatomy when you don't. Which, yeah, obviously Gwen maybe should have been upfront, but like I pointed out earlier on in the video, different times, you know, the persecution was already there. Like, there's no way that she could have come forward. And I think when you're just in the heat of the moment, in the throes of passion or lust or whatever, things happen that you regret, and you just have to find a way to move on from it. Not go down the route that these men have gone down. Well, did go down. Now, to avoid a third trial, Jason pleads no contest to manslaughter. And on December 16th, 2005, he's finally sentenced to 6 years. And this is with credit to time served. Gloria Allred, she represented Gwen's family, and said that he asked to begin serving after the birth of his child during April 2006, and this was actually granted. So Gwen's aunt, Emma Rodriguez, gave a statement saying that Gwen lived every day of her life as wanting to be a girl in every sense of the word. So if anyone who didn't know her made her feel that way, why would she say that she was transgender? Especially in today's society, she would have been rejected, if not harmed, had she been open about it, which is exactly obviously what I've been talking about. The Gwen was actually laid to rest in Newark on October 25th, 2002. Now, it was reported that people actually defended the 4 men responsible for her death. They turned up to her funeral where waving posters and banners and stuff, pleading that the 4 guys be found innocent. A lot of transphobic and disparaging remarks on these posters. And unfortunately, Gwen's family and a lot of her friends, they were wearing angel wings at this particular time. So they managed to stand around her coffin and block the view of these hateful people. At Sylvia's request, she had Gwen's name legally changed to Gwen Amber Rose, which is quite sweet. Amber Rose is actually my niece's name, but I always had an affinity to those sort of names. Always had an affinity to the sort of colours that they represent, as you can tell by my hair. Amber, orange, rose, red. Obviously, you commonly associate red roses. But Amber Rose was the name that Sylvia had chosen had Gwen initially been born as a girl. So Sylvia's life continued to be affected by the incident. She ends up losing her job as a legal assistant. She becomes homeless. And as of 2022, Sylvia, she's still said to be really deeply affected by what happened to her daughter. She lives with her son, but she's never been able to return to work. In September of 2006, California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, which I always find really bizarre, he was actually a governor at one point, because obviously the whole action film thing and who he was in the 80s compared to becoming a Californian governor. I always find that sort of really bizarre, but hey ho. Imagine it's the same country that voted Donald Trump in to run as president, so yeah, sins and roundabouts. I'm not comparing Arnold Schwarzenegger to Donald Trump by any means, but it's just a weird correlation. So he ends up signing a bill for the Gwen Araujo Justice for Victims Act. Now, this limited the use of the gay and trans panic defence, rightly so. So it basically meant that anyone who was responsible for a homophobic attack, they couldn't use the defence of, well, I was in panic because this person was coming on to me and I didn't want it, or anything down that line. They could no longer use this act. They could no longer use this defence, and rightly so. Now, when it came to the guys' sentencing and their prison terms, I couldn't really find a lot of information on what they actually got up to in prison. What I do know is that Jason, he was released in July of 2012 after serving his sentence. Sharon, he was released sometime in 2016. Jose, he was released in 2016 also, but this was actually from support of Sylvia. So she felt that he was the most apologetic out of the four men, and she defended him to the hill and said, "Oh, give this man another chance." When it came to Michael, she was completely indifferent. She knew that he still was maintaining he was innocent. He maintained that he had done nothing wrong, and he comes up for parole in 2016 as well. She lobbied against this really hard, and Michael himself, he actually stand up and says, "I'm not ready to be released. I need to stay in a little bit longer." So kind of credit where credit is due for that, if I'm honest. So he spends the next 3 years in prison. He comes up for parole once more in 2019. This, I couldn't find a reason why, but he was actually denied once again parole. As to why, I do not know. I couldn't find any information about that. I believe he may have come up for parole a third time in 2022, but I don't know if he's actually been released. I don't know if he's actually still in prison or not. That one I can't find out. This is just obviously sadly where the story ends. Obviously, there's still a lot of support for Gwen online. Whilst doing this research, I've only just come across this case quite recently. I stated, obviously, I wanted to look more into crimes against people in my community, and I correlated a lot of Gwen's experiences with my own. Obviously, we're talking about two completely different things. I grew up as a gay male teenager. Gwen grew up as a transgender teenager. But we both grew up in a world that readily didn't accept anyone within our community. Or there was a lot of harsh judgment against people in our community. But sadly for Gwen, it cost her a life. So obviously, as always, I just want to dedicate this video to Gwen. I want to dedicate this video to her family. And this is the reason. Forget everything that you see online about Pride events. This is the reason that Pride events exist and happen. Because people like Gwen, who unfortunately have lost their life due to the hateful experiences of others. So whatever you see online is just a small fraction of what Pride actually stands for. So please don't judge people in my community for what you see online. The small negativity that you see online is not what Pride is about. If you do end up actually go yourself, if you're an ally and you go yourself, then you will see that for yourself. I just want to say thank you to everyone who has been watching. As always, just can't do this without you. I really, really appreciate all the support that you guys have given me over the past year. As promised, obviously, the really big story that I was working on is going to come out. It's just a little bit later than what was planned. I can only apologise for that, for being a clumsy cow. When you... hopefully, you guys took something from this story, from some of the stuff I've spoken about in my own experiences. And just treat people who are different to you with just a little bit of respect. You know, you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to support it physically. Just don't be hateful, because it just doesn't get you anywhere. So as always, if you guys could just like, share and subscribe, be really, really appreciated. And I'll be back next week with some more true crime stories with Silhouette. Take care, guys, and I will see you very, very soon.